Quitters never prosper.
You could say that again.
Quitters
It's
never
just an
prosper.
expression.
All right, so in today's podcast, if you're not watching the video, is part two uh, titled Why Ministers Quit. Uh, Last week we talked about some reasons that ministers, and when we say ministers, we say those that are being paid to minister, those that have chosen it as their profession. Um, Last week we talked about some COVID specific reasons, as into why someone might quit ministry as their profession. But this week we're going to be considering some of the burdens that have always plagued ministers, reasons why ministers would quit, going back to the beginning of the gospel, the beginning of ministers in general. Um, Zach, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Yep, I'm Zach Griffin, and the lovely voice that you just heard prior to mine is Joshua Hester, and we are both full time ministers. Um, but I think we both have also experienced, uh, even in our short time ministering, we've experienced challenges. We've experienced some things that I guess have um, made us question or doubt sometimes. And I think maybe some of these things today are something that maybe we have thought about. Maybe they're just things that, um, that we've seen. I can think of particular individuals where these things were core to why they left ministry or were either really on the verge of moving out of that as a career. We want to emphasize again, just like we did last time, that just because you may not be in a paid position, um, you know, there is certainly something that we could take from these things, um, uh, because we're all ministers if we are Christians, and so there's certainly some things that we can take from these as we talk about them today.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the first thing um, that I would like to bring up in reasons why ministers quit um, are family pressures, or things that you know. If you choose to be a full time paid minister, that is your choice. But unfortunately, it doesn't just affect you. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
just affect yourself. It affects, if you're married, it affects your spouse. If you have children, it affects your children. Um, what are some, Zach, what are some ways you think ministers might experience pressure by being a minister?
Well, it's interesting because I think about what Peter says, because I know that it can particularly the pressure can come from the children certainly, but I feel like sometimes the majority of pressure comes from the wife because of the circumstances. And if family pressure is an issue, typically I feel like in most cases that I've seen, it's the wife that is not content being the preacher's wife, right, or being the minister's wife, and because there's a lot of pressure on her. A lot of times there are unspoken rules. There's unspoken expectations sometimes that churches have. Um, I'm very thankful uh, that the church here in Moultrie has not put on Emily the kind of pressures, and we're not married yet, but they've not shown it with other preachers and their wives in the past here. uh, they don't put the expectations on the preacher's wife that some churches do. You know, a lot of churches feel like that when they're hiring a minister, they're hiring a team,
Hmm.
and that they're hiring. They want somebody who's going to come in and preach, but they want somebody that's married to somebody that will teach Bible classes and head up the
Hmm.
ladies' day and do all of that stuff. And I feel like most of the time, the wife is not somebody that went to school for that. They didn't. You know, I know that like the Memphis School of Preaching, they have some classes for wives to take. You know, to kind of help them. But like, I mean, not everybody does that, and even still, it doesn't really prepare you if that's not your drive. Um, and you know, they may very well know, and I guess it's different for folks that you know they start dating or they get married before he becomes a minister.
Hmm.
Uh, and the people that like he's a minister, he knows he's going to do that, and then he gets involved with somebody. But either case, the woman doesn't marry the preacher; she marries the man. And so that's what's of most concern to her. Um, I'm trying to think about where Peter was talking about, um, and here it is. It's First Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Husbands are instructed uh, to live with your wives in an understanding way, and that is a challenge for preachers because uh, we need to recognize if you're a preacher or a minister and you're married, you need to live with your wife in an understanding way so that maybe the pressure is not on her so much to where this becomes a problem. Um, uh,
Well,
those are just some
I mean,
preliminary
I
things.
think about well, I mean, I think about the pressures of number one, um, like you said, all of these responsibilities of maybe she's asked to teach ladies Bible class or children's Bible class,
Yep.
and maybe she doesn't want to, but there's this
Mm-hmm.
expectation that, and that's okay. Not every, it's okay that someone doesn't want to teach a Bible class, um, but she's expected to. And the same thing, like you said, with ladies' days,
Yeah.
all of these expectations, but there's also an expectation on, um, and I don't think we should do this, but sometimes we have a tendency to put the preacher on a pedestal and how he should live,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, his wife is also put on that pedestal. The phrase "the preachers live in a glass house."
Oh yeah, a
Uh,
little fishbowl.
yeah, fishbowl.
Yeah.
Um, and what's interesting is that I've heard of ministers that don't feel like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I've also heard ministers that do feel like that.
Really feel like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I one of the professors from Freed Hardman when he was preaching full time, he talked about how at nighttime he would leave his porch light on. He said just in case anybody wanted to stop by or come in, um, the porch light was on for them. And then in an elders meeting, uh, I don't remember if it was an elder or deacon, somebody said, "Hey, I've noticed that your porch light is on all the time," and the preacher lived in a parsonage, and the leader the leadership said, instead of wasting the church's money leaving that porch light on, why don't you turn it off at nighttime? Um, something as little as a porch light, you know, Yeah.
Oh man.
So,
Yeah.
um, and sometimes, family, whether it is, I mean, I think this goes for spouses and children as well,
Mhm.
feeling this pressure of having to live a certain way.
Yeah. And yeah, if anybody didn't choose the situation, it's the children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've known several preachers' kids that were my age, and them talking about how you feel like you can't make a mistake. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, if you make a huge mistake, could it cost your father his job?
Yeah.
All sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what I guess what kind of what comes to mind for me with this is what are some things that we can do, for wives and preachers' kids or ministers' kids. Um, what can we do to kind of maybe take some of the pressure off of them so that they're not putting the pressure on us, to give up ministry. This is too hard on us, and we want you to quit. And maybe I don't know. What do you think some things are that we can do?
well, I think whenever you, you know, become a paid minister, or maybe you're getting a new job as a paid minister,
Hmm.
there has to be lines that are drawn,
Yeah.
and there have to be expectations. There have to be clear expectations in that.
Hmm.
You're hiring me. You're supporting me in my ministry. You are not supporting my wife
Yep. She's
in
not
her
getting paid
ministry.
for it, right?
No, I mean, if you want to pay her, that's a different conversation. But
Yeah. Then she has a job, and yeah.
yeah, um, but it's one of those things like, yes, as a married couple, we are a team, but just because we're a team, I mean,
That team is your marriage. It's not
right,
a ministry team. We're facing life together as a team. We are married. We are one together in that sense. But
right,
it's not like you're hiring both of us kind of thing.
yeah. I mean, if I worked in a factory, no one would expect my wife to come and help
Yeah.
me during my shift.
Exactly. You're still a team with her, but she doesn't go to the factory with you.
No.
you know.
Or if I'm a school teacher, it's not expected of her to
Right.
assist in my classroom.
Yeah.
Um,
And nowadays a lot of the times it's, she works. A lot of the times the preacher's wife, she works, you know. Emily's a teacher, and so like that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. She has to stay after school sometimes, and her thing is band, so like the band practices and all after school and in the fall and going to games, and it's just like it's a big time commitment and a big stress commitment and a lot of things, and it's like you can't expect her to work part time for the church and have a full time job and be married and help raise kids and stuff like that. I mean, like it's just but something that I've told her, and maybe this can kind of help things in that arena with the minister's wife, is to just say my expectations for you are to be a Christian woman. That's it. I don't expect anything greater than you. Um, you know, than what I expect a Christian woman should be. And that means that if you feel that your talents and your abilities are in teaching Bible class, then that's great. But if you think that that's or a ladies' day or any particular thing, if you think your talents are there, then use them there. But if your talents are elsewhere, then let's figure out some way to use them. Um, because we're all every Christian should be using their talents to glorify God and to serve others and stuff. So I would not put on her anything like that, you know, anything more than to just say, I expect you to be a Christian woman. Um, and for the children, I would probably say that you need to foster an environment where they can fail and you know, they can feel like the rest of the kids at church. Um, that there's not, um, this looming cloud of people that are around them that are watching them, looking at them to fail, and when they do, you stick up for your kid. You stick up for your kid, and you know, you could even say if somebody approaches you and says something, well, I saw your kid doing this. I'm like, well, who is he doing it with? Your kid?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's how it is sometimes. There's pressures that are put on them. So what do we do about that? We have to alleviate the pressure as much as we can. Uh, so give them an environment to fail, and um, yes, we teach them respectfulness, responsibility, and you know, we train them up in the discipline of the Lord. But I think part of that is, to show and extend grace, um, and mercy, because the Lord does that to us. Um, sometimes there's severe discipline that has to take place. There's no reason to go easy on them because they're the preacher's kid.
Mm-hmm.
But they need to have an environment where you know, there's not unnecessary pressure on them, because that can cause rebellion and can cause some problems.
Yeah.
For sure.
I personally have been blessed with a wife that when she was 14 years old, she said she wanted to go to Freed Hardeman and she wanted to marry a youth minister. And that was, that,
That's awesome.
yeah. So
Yeah.
ministry is very big in her life because that that's what she wants to do. Um,
Yeah.
but realizing that not every minister's wife is like that. That
Oh yeah.
their dream might be whatever their profession is. Or
Yeah.
spending, even if they are at home raising children. That
Yeah.
might be their dream, and it might not be doing ladies' days and teaching Bible classes.
Oh yeah. But
Um,
and a whole nother part of this, and we may not want to go into this because we probably need to move on soon. But um, a whole nother part of this is I've seen preachers' wives encourage their husbands to quit because they saw how difficult and how much pressure was on him. They saw, how maybe a church treated him, or
mhm.
how how much he's losing sleep over other people, and things like that. And so she may look at him and look at what he's going through and say, you just need to quit. Um, so that's another story, and maybe that's, I don't know, that's something else to consider. But you know, communication. I'll just
Yeah,
say that communication is
yeah, that
important.
might be another episode of communicate. What we communicate with our spouse or our children or the members or
Yeah, we could probably do a whole
leadership.
episode on this little section right here, but we're not going to do
Yeah,
that right
yeah.
now.
So we'll put that on the list. Yeah, communication.
Hmm.
Um, so let's see here, our next topic, um, and I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on this topic necessarily,
Hmm.
um, but there are times in ministry where, um, because of particular circumstances, that you are not able to be supported financially,
Yeah,
um, as
money,
much,
money, money.
yeah, money, as much that may be needed.
Yeah,
Um, and I think about there are several reasons. It might depend on your location. Maybe the church is not strong where you are. Maybe,
Yeah.
it's just not able to financially support someone.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, maybe you're doing more of a part-time thing where where you're,
Yeah.
you're preaching on Sundays, but you also have a secular job, during the week.
Right. And money, it seems like a superficial reason to quit ministry, but sometimes it's necessary for people. You know, um, when I worked part time for the church here in Moultrie for a little while, and really I treated it like full time. I was here just as much as the preacher was. I was doing all kinds of stuff, and you know, but it just wasn't. They couldn't support two full time ministers, so I had to do something else. So I taught school for a year until the position came open. They asked me to be the full time minister here because they could support one, they just could support two. Um, but yeah, I've noticed and I've seen a lot of churches that they are smaller and they can only support somebody part time, and you got all these kids coming out of school and they want to do full time ministry, and they won't go to these churches because they're like, well, I want to work full time. Uh, but that's what a lot of churches need is somebody. I mean, because they just can't support somebody full time. Um, and yeah, I agree. It depends on your location, how big or small the church is. Um, I think another thing too is, and not to bring politics into it. I'll bring economy into it though.
Okay.
Uh, inflation. Uh, a lot of the times, you might get a set salary, and it does not get adjusted for inflation. It does not, and maybe if you've worked at a place for a long time and they just can't afford to, in their budget, and maybe the giving hasn't increased with inflation too. Um, maybe it gets to be at a point where it's like I have to do something else now. It's just not enough. Um, so uh, it might be that the full time minister has to get a part time job,
Mm-hmm.
or something else, and it just becomes a whole lot. So it is a reason, and maybe we don't want to say much more about it, but we want to acknowledge that it is a reason that people do quit. Um, I would say though that if you have to for this reason, um, don't quit ministry, right? You might have to get another job, um, but don't quit ministering to other people. Um, don't lose that heart of service, and because we need a lot of people in the secular world that have the heart of a minister, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we certainly do, and maybe if money is a problem, then maybe it's a budgeting problem.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's something there, and maybe you know, yes, you like the 4 bedroom house, but maybe you could make it on a 3 bedroom house. you know, uh, it may just be as simple as that, um, and that's a hard thing when we have in our minds, well, this is the standard of living that I want to have. This is the house and the car that I want to have, and but that's a reality. Though people have an idea in their mind, even ministers do, um, and uh, that can have a say um, on what they do for a living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, um, I think about the fact that when I went to school to be a minister, I did not go to become a rich person. That was
Oh
not
no,
that was
no,
not my intent.
right, if you
Yeah,
are doing it for the money, I think you should probably do something else. If
right.
that's the
And
reason you're doing ministry, you should do it for something. You should do something else.
yes,
Cause
number one,
yeah,
it's the wrong reason. And number two, you're probably going to be disappointed if you're doing it for the money as well.
yeah,
So, um, but yeah, I understand that. What I've noticed, um, there was someone south of here who um, the congregation offered a full time youth minister position, and he did it for several years. But he actually found out that he could make more money, enough money, more money, enough money to support his family doing something else. So what's interesting is that he technically quit his ministry job
hmm
to get this other job, but really not a lot changed. He still taught Bible class. He still
hmm
would have the kids over to his house.
yeah,
He even though the money situation didn't work out, he still had a servant ministering heart and way about him that
absolutely,
never changed.
yeah,
So
yeah. So yeah, I would encourage, if you do have to, you know, seek a different career path because of the money, be like that guy.
yeah,
Keep ministering. So,
yeah. Well, we're going to take a small break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about a few more reasons of why paid ministers might quit. So uh, we'll go to the mid roll, and then we'll see you in just a minute.
thanks everyone for watching or listening today. We hope that you will like, share, subscribe, comment on this video or the podcast that you're listening to. Um, we are on Rumble and YouTube and Facebook if you want to watch the show, and we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you listen to podcasts if you would just like to listen. We are part of the Ministry League network, and the Ministry League is a wonderful Christian organization that is focused on a lot of different areas of ministry. We hope that you'll check out their website, ministryleague.com, and also their app. They have a fantastic app with lots of Christian resources. We like to plug this every time because it is so worth it. It's so worth it to just go and download the free app. So please check out the Ministry League, their website, their app, and also check out the Bearing Up shop. There is a lot of great stuff on there. Everything that is purchased there goes into supporting this work that we are dedicated to, and everything is all out of pocket for us. Um, but we would certainly like your support in that area, and we're not just going to ask for money. So we have some wonderful products there. Um, premium shirts and things that are really soft and fantastic stuff. So please check out the Bearing Up shop. And we again thank you so much for listening today. Let's jump back into our discussion.
The next thing I would like to talk about, Zach, is loss of zeal, maybe lacking in our own or in someone's own personal faith, um, how that could dwindle down over time in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sometimes it can be difficult to pour into other people, and sometimes ministers feel like they're trying to pour out of an empty cup,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
and because I mean, you look back at what the word minister means. It means servant, or to serve. Um, so sometimes Yeah, sometimes you serve so much, and sometimes you minister so much that you yourself are lacking. Whether it's your own relationship with God, or um, maybe how you're leading your family, your own personal family spiritually. Um, so, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into this one. Um, there's a book, and I'm trying to remember what the title is. I think it's "How Full Is Your Bucket?" Um, but basically, the idea is uh, everybody has a bucket over their head, um, and you can either take out of it or you can put into it. And when that bucket is empty, uh, there's depression, there's low self-esteem, there's just we feel empty. This is really the best way of describing it. And so, oftentimes with ministry, you know, yeah, it's I'm focused on my job is to pour out my bucket to people, and sometimes it doesn't get full because um, for a whole variety of reasons. Um, maybe the taxing of the family pressure is a part of it. Maybe it's just the busyness. Um, I was reading a book on expository preaching this past week, and it was talking about how sometimes ministers they try to differentiate studying for a lesson and studying for themselves. And I understand that, and I myself have done that. Um, but uh, you don't have to differentiate the two, right? When you're studying for a lesson, you can be studying for yourself at the same time. Trying to apply what you're learning and what you're studying. And I think the best studies that we do for lessons are the things that we study so in depth that we can't fit everything into the lesson. I think that's a good sign that we're making some really good study. Is we just get so delved into it, and you start running down the rabbit trails, and I remember I remember there was a study that I was doing one time. Uh, I think it was on Acts 2:38, and I was just going to mention that verse just very briefly in the lesson, but I started to like get into the Greek language and like started to get in some stuff that was like really really deep, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to include this in the lesson. But it made me feel better. I mean, it made me, like I'm doing some good study here, and I've enjoyed this, and I'm feeling more full, having given myself, the freedom to run down those rabbit trails sometimes. And so, um, I think that's one thing that we can do. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can affect our personal faith. Maybe we are, um, given into secret sin. Maybe we're given into, um, we become like the Pharisees in the sense that we're so focused on the outside, we're so focused on what everybody sees, that our own prayer life has, you know, gone to put. I mean, you're not praying on your own. You don't
Hmm.
really have a personal relationship with God outside of what everybody sees. Um, it can get like that sometimes. Um, and sometimes the preacher is the one that's wearing a bigger mask than anybody else.
Hmm.
Um, and that's it's a sad situation. Um, but I think maybe what we should do in this is we can talk about how we can prevent getting there, getting to that place, and how to restore zeal if we found ourselves in that place.
Hmm. Well, I think about um, there are different aspects of ministry, as in, um, you have the moment, the time every week that's spent towards lessons and preparing lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed, we all have things in ministry that we enjoy more than others, or we get more fulfillment
Yeah.
out of others. So, um, for someone, they might enjoy, um, they might enjoy the ministry aspect in that they enjoy visiting hospitals, they enjoy going to nursing homes, they enjoy going to kids ball games, they enjoy being around people more. Or I've seen ministers that enjoy study time and they enjoy prepping for lessons and um, you know giving those lessons. So um, you know for someone who is working on lessons, I've seen for someone that's the lessons guy,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a minister might say, well, you know, I've been preparing two sermons and two Bible classes, every week for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the lessons guy might say, yeah, that's the best part. Like I love that. But for someone else, that might be the more taxing
Yeah.
part of their week. Um,
And even
and
for the people that like doing that, it can get mundane and it can get, like, well, what do I think up now? What am I going to preach this Sunday? And I mean, and you know, that can cause a lot of stress too.
yeah, of trying to improve and be better and
Oh yeah.
present God's word. Yeah, um, yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I enjoy visiting with people. I enjoy going to ball
Yeah.
games. I enjoy all that stuff. So sometimes I find myself, um, coming to the church building during the day, and then in the evenings when people are off work, when people are out of school, that's when I spend time with more people,
Yeah.
and I can literally wear myself out in a week, or especially during the summer, when kids are out of school and you're going to camps and having activities, and you just you just can kind of wear yourself out. And you mentioned the fact that the preacher can wear the biggest mask of all. I find myself trying to trying to put people in the place where they can improve their lives spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
where I forget about my own spiritual life
Yeah.
completely.
Right.
Um, so something that I think that we can do to prevent this is me. I haven't done a great job with this, but in theory, um, this is what would be good for me. If I said, all right, one night a week, um, Morgan and I, whether it's we stay at home and cook supper or we even go out and have a date night, one
Mm-hmm.
night a week, this is just going to be for us. And um, because I find myself giving up every night of the week for for the church, for everyone else. So for me, having those little moments, I think, and that's how God wanted it to be when He established the Sabbath. One day every week, you're going to rest and you're going to think about me and you're going to reflect on where you are. Um, and I think sometimes we forget that God intended for us to have moments of rest, moments
Yeah.
where we didn't really do anything. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's one way we can prevent, um, whether you call it burnout or losing losing zeal in what you're doing, is taking moments just to rest and not do anything at all, which sounds counterproductive almost to say. to put out
Yeah.
time to do nothing.
Oh yeah. We've got to change our, and I think I've said this in another episode. We got to change our idea of what productivity means. It's not checking things off a list. Uh, Productivity is about what makes you productive, and if what makes you productive is to one day out of the week, have some kind of agreement to where you do a personal study, at Starbucks for like an hour before you come into the office, or I mean that you just for yourself, you have a daily Bible reading thing. You know, that's changed my life. I did it with Logan this past year, um, and studying with him and talking about what we've studied and stuff has been awesome. Uh, I've read the Bible through the year before, but it's just like when you're doing it with other people. And this year I'm doing it with Emily, and we read separately, and we don't always talk about what we're reading, but I can see if she's read or not, and she can see if I've read or not because we do it on the Bible app, so we can kind of hold each other accountable a little bit. But then we often talk about what we've studied, and that's I'm not doing anything with the church for that. I'm not basing. We're not all doing that together, or I'm not using it. I'm not really using it at all for you know what we're studying. At services. I'm just doing that for me. You know, and that's a huge thing for me. I gotta have that. Um, you know, but I think there's also I would call them steroid shots of things that you can do uh, that will both prevent and probably restore your zeal. So prevent you from losing zeal, but also restore it. And I think some of those things are visiting with people, like going and visiting with older folks, um, and people that are hurting, um, because I mean, it makes you feel good to be there for people, and it helps remind you what you're there for and what you're doing. Because if there's a minister and you're like that guy that he does a lot of preparing, and that's what his primary thing is. Like, I'm gonna prepare lessons all the time, and I'm gonna keep in the office most of the time. Well, I think he's gonna get burned out doing that, even if he enjoys doing it. But unless you're in people's homes and you're with people, you'll forget why you do ministry in the first place, because it's about people. We're in the people business. Is what we are. We're not in the sermon business. We are in the souls business. Um, so visiting with people, as much as you may not like it or whatever you think about it, door knocking.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Or some kind of evangelism effort. That can be a steroid shot too. This is like, you know, this is what it's all about. Anything to sort of remind you why you're doing what you're doing. And then, a couple other things are, you know, gospel meetings and lectureships and things where you can get away and you can listen to other people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
those things are really helpful. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and something I think that we can do for each other is, um,
Listen to Bearing Up.
yeah, there we go. Perfect. Um, I mean, like, um, outside of this, like Zach, you and I, we call each other and we encourage each other, and we have, other friends that are, preachers and youth ministers that,
Yeah. We talk about
um,
things with each other that we haven't talked about on here. So,
no.
yeah.
Um, so, I think for me to call my friend and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Hey, how's life going? How's ministry going?" Um, I'm giving to that individual, but then what always happens is they always turn around and they ask me those same questions.
Yeah.
And um, and I think I think of someone who is more alone, or someone who may not have other friends, or might not be in an area where there are other paid ministers, um, and how that would be tough. That could be
Mm-hmm.
very, very difficult, not having support, from other people that are going through the same things that you're going through. So, so being that for other people and allowing them to be that for you, um, being that support, I think goes leaps and bounds in preventing, the loss of faith and the loss of zeal, and even restoring and even bringing back.
Yeah.
Um,
And,
yeah,
and you know what? Some ministers may feel different about this, but I hope they're open to it. You may need to go forward. Uh, you might need to, you know, maybe you go forward at the end of your own lesson, or maybe maybe somebody just happens to be speaking and you know, but you might need to do that. And you may be surprised by the outpouring that people have for their minister if he's admitting that he's weak, admitting that he needs to grow, that that zeal is being challenged. Um, I went forward one time when I was before I got into ministry, and I was doing a lot for the church. I was even giving lessons and stuff. This is before any education, really, any formal education. Um, and was doing song leading all the time, all that stuff. And people would tell me after I went forward, well, we thought you were on fire before. But it was all outward. It was all,
hmm
I didn't have a very good faith at the time. I was doing a lot of that stuff for the church and not for God. And it's very easy to get like that as a minister. I'm doing this for the church. I'm not really considering God in it. Um, and so, but from there on, uh, I've had some low points, you know, um, but I've always felt that it's important, you know, that a minister feels comfortable doing that if they need to.
yeah. Um, well, our fourth thing,
And finally,
um, and and final thing, um,
yep,
these episodes have been, because I think we've had a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss. These episodes have been longer.
yeah, you probably do an episode on each one, like we said before.
Yeah. Um, is the last topic is getting burned or being discouraged by church members or by church leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I forget that people are people, and people disappoint, and people can be ugly, and you know, um, people can be people.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, I think about I think about how Paul got burned by John Mark, and how he was, or he evidently did not want to be with John Mark.
he kind of burnt him too.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Mutual
bunch of
burning.
sizzling, burning going on. Yeah. Um, and we all have moments where we might disagree with a church member or leadership on something,
Yeah,
um, or we might think that they're being unfair
mm-hmm.
with us, or I mean, we just think they're being just plain old hateful with us.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, it
yeah.
happens.
Um,
That book that we mentioned last week, The Minister's Heart. One of the pages in there says you're gonna get fired and you're not gonna know why. and that's a hard place to be in, you know. And I knew of a minister, and I've been thinking about him a lot in this episode. He's still preaching though.
Mm-hmm.
He's old enough to be my dad, but he he um, was approached by the elders of the church that he was in, and they gave him three things that he needed to work on. You know, because there were some he was introverted, you know, and you know they kind of wanted somebody to be more, you know, a people person and involved with other people a little bit more. He's kind of a homebody, and so they were like, you need to reach out to people more, and you need to simplify your lessons or something like that, or distinguish. You know, there was something about it, you know. And I think the third thing, um, you know, I can't remember what it was, but he had been improving in those things. You know, I heard about the three things that he needed to work on, and I could see that he was improving in all of those things, and they still let him go.
Mm-hmm.
So like they told him like you need to improve in these things, and he did, and they still let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem fair. Uh, it doesn't seem right, you know. And but he's been preaching in another congregation now for many years now. I think he's been there at least 10 years now. Now I think about it, but yeah, I mean things like that will happen, and you know I think about Paul with Corinth. Like Paul could have just been like, "Man, forget you guys," you know,
Yeah.
because he shows up and you know he establishes the church there. Paul establishes the church there, and then they're like, "Well, who are you?" Like, did you forget?
Who am I? Yeah.
Who am I? Yeah, I mean he could have totally, because they did kind of burn him. You know, they're like these other super apostles that were fake apostles that kind of, you know, that were, you know, being boastful, and they looked a lot more prestigious, and they were kind of like they weren't treating Paul with the respect that he deserved as an apostle and as somebody that brought them the gospel, and they were rejecting the truth, and that's what Paul was most concerned with. Um, but it was just like, you know, Paul could have looked at that and said, well, if that's how you're going to treat me, then maybe I just shouldn't do this anymore. And maybe it could have even gone to, you know, why continue in ministry anymore if all that's going to happen is people are going to do this. And he could have said that with Galatia too. You know, like, what are you doing? You've left this. Why did you leave? Who hindered you from, you know, obeying the truth? And it's just like, you know, you can find yourself in a place that, you know, the church leadership is unfair, or the church members are, you know, divisive. And you know, sometimes, I would say most of the time, somebody is not going to like you. When you're the minister somewhere, somebody in that church is not going to like you. And you want everybody to like you, but that's just how it
Mm-hmm.
is. And there's always, not always, but a lot of the times, there's that one lady or that one gentleman that just like, they want to pick on you. And it's just, those things can happen, and it can discourage you from doing church work, especially if it's like a you've lost your job sort of thing. It's very easy to say, well, I'm just going to quit ministry altogether, because if this is how the church is and what the church is going to be, then I don't want any part of it. Um, so I think am I ranting? I feel like I'm ranting.
It's okay. It's okay. Let it out.
I'm
Let it
very
out, man.
happy where I am in Moultrie.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
church here is wonderful.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot, and I've experienced a lot, and uh, This is one of those things, and I feel like, um, there's always two sides to a story. You know, sometimes there's more than two. Um, but uh, the lack of empathy and sometimes treating a minister like he's expendable, like he's not a member of the body, he's just an employee that, well, we can just get somebody else. You know that that's a mentality that a lot of churches have, and they go through ministers like this, and and they burn every one of them. They
Mm-hmm.
stay for like 2 or 3 years, and there are churches like that, and it can be a big discouragement, and uh, can cause a lot of ministers to just say, "I'm not doing this anymore."
Yep. And I think this is universal. I think anybody that has been in ministry for very long has experienced different degrees of this,
Mm-hmm.
but I think everyone has experienced, where someone doesn't like you
Conflict.
or
That's
someone,
what it is. Yeah.
you're not their favorite, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, kind of, to wrap this up and to put a bow on it, um, there are lots of things, and in these two episodes where we've talked about it, you know,
Let me
we
say real quick about the getting burned thing, because are you moving into the application of the whole deal?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, all that stuff may happen to you, but don't allow that to distort your view of God and His church. Right? You know, you might get burned by other people. You might get burned by church leaders, but God's design in His church is still perfect. You know, it's perfectly imperfect. Um, and I think that's to teach us patience and grace and love, and all of the core characteristics of what it means to be a Christian. These things have to be uh, in the presence of weakness and selfishness, and that's how they develop, is through human weakness. I feel like, um, so please don't, if this has happened to you, don't let it distort your view of God and the church. And maybe it was just the thing that God used to get you out of a harmful and toxic situation, and to move into a different area of ministry, or to move to a different congregation, and maybe things go well there. You know, um, so
yeah,
don't lose heart.
yeah. A lot of it is having faith that God has placed you in a position, in positions um, that you needed to go through, even if you've gone through a hard situation. Maybe that's to prepare you for whatever God has put in place for you,
Yeah,
to come up. So,
probably is for your growth. You know, if you're faithful and you love God, uh, it probably is for your growth that you're in that situation.
yep. So don't quit.
Yeah.
Don't quit ministry. Yeah. Um, but yeah, there are lots of reasons why. I mean, reasons that I've heard of, and when I say quitting ministry, um, you know, I'm not I'm not necessarily saying they're not the preacher anymore, but they're still involved. I've known lots of Christians that were very involved and were servants, and things happen and they're not. Um, Either
Mm-hmm.
they're not a Christian anymore, or maybe they are, but they just show up and you know they're not servants. They're not ministering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so some of those things, no matter what experiences you have or experiences we have, talking to us, talking to ourselves, um, I hope that we never stop being God's servants, God's
Yeah.
God's ministers. Um, and that's the point of our conversation today, is to look at reasons why, and to possibly prepare ourselves for things that might happen. That way, when when someone tells us they don't like us, or when the money situation isn't right, or when you're feeling family pressures, or spiritually yourself, you feel yourself dwindling. Always be in a position to where you're God's servant, where you are God's servant, where you're one of His ministers.
Amen. Yeah.
So don't quit. Don't ever give up.
Don't do it.
You have anything else, Zach, or do?
Um, no, I guess there were a few little things that we kind of just mentioned about what you can do. Another one is, do you have that book that you can throw up on the screen? Uh, that The Minister's Heart. It's a great,
Somewhere.
it's a great little book, and I mean, it takes like 5 minutes to read, but
Yeah,
it's a
it's like
nice, yeah,
super thin.
yeah,
Yeah,
and there's like a sentence on each page,
yeah,
but it's really good. I think it's really good for young ministers, particularly, because it kind of tells you like a lot of these things that we've talked about. You know, some of the things that you know you can expect in ministry, but at the end, it reminds you, what are you doing this for? What is this all about? And I will plug the next episode is going to be about the blessings of ministry. So we're going to try and motivate you rather than just talk about all the things that are hard with ministry. We're going to talk about the blessings of ministry, uh, all the really good things about it, the kinds of things that'll keep you going. Um, so looking forward to that.
yep. Um, well, if you're good, I'm good,
Okay, we're
brother.
good.
And
I've talked enough.
yeah, um, I'll have the closing. I'll pray for us, and then I'll have the servant spotlight.
All right.
So let's pray. Our Lord and our God, we want to thank you for today. I'm thankful for this opportunity to talk about you, to talk about your people, especially those that love you and love the church, and they want to see the church grow and be more like you. I'm thankful for Zach and how I see Jesus in him every time we talk. Thank you for everything. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, my servant spotlight today is a person named Bo Bennett. He is a member here. He is 23, I think. Um, so I don't think I mentioned this um, here yet, but my wife Morgan and I, we're transitioning. We're moving places. I'm stepping down from my role here as the associate minister, and
He's
we
not quitting.
started no, it's not quitting. No, no, we're just transitioning. We're just moving somewhere else with new opportunities, and so Morgan and I have started a college age group here while we've been here, and so Bo is in the college age group, and he has talked to me quite a bit in taking ownership of that ministry. Um, he'll teach the class, and um, he's already started a calendar, for events and things with that age group. Um, I don't know. He's really stepped in and said, "Hey, there's going to be a void here, and I want to help fill the void. I want to make sure that this group stays strong. Um, because it's the most, when you're talking about age groups within the church, it's the most vulnerable age group, to people leaving the church, and I don't know, he's been really awesome through this,
Hmm.
and taking ownership and saying, hey, we're going, this group is going to be good, because we're going to do things and we're going to be involved in each other's lives, and you know, so, anyways, so Bo Bennett is a servant spotlight for today.
Very cool. Servant heart.
Yep. Well, um, Zach, I've enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for watching, everybody, or listening today. We hope you have a great week.